So after a month and 10 days, I can positively say that I have solved the Charlie Kirk thing, the thing regarding Charlie Kirk. There has been so much confusion, and yet I now fully understand. So where to start? Where to start? There's so much. Judeo-Christian. Judeo-Christian. What does it mean to be Judeo-Christian? What does that word mean? We know there's Judeo, Jewish. We know there's Christian, the thing that starts with Christ, Jesus Christ. And yet, I have to start with the word Judeo-Christian. When did this idea of Judeo-Christian start? Because if we look at the original Bible, composed by St. Marcion in the 2nd century AD, there is no Judeo involved. The original Bible, on the first page of the Christian Bible, Jesus comes down from some mountain and starts fighting demons. He's a crusader fighting demons. What's the name of exorcising? Exorcising with an O-R, not an E-R. Jesus is a demon slayer. That's every story in the original Bible is Jesus going around and exorcising demons from demon-infested Jews. And so you have to understand that the God of Jesus Christ is antithetical to the God of the Jews. So they're two inverse things. Christ is a God of love and light and life. And the God of the Jews is one of child mutilation, exterminating populaces, kill them all and all of their animals, exterminate them fully, blood offerings, child sacrifice. Yet, Moses wasn't so bad. But they had to kill Moses. The priests that learned the evil ways of the controllers in Egypt after that had corrupted and after the downfall of the pharaohs. The pharaohs weren't so bad, and the priests took over, and they become the intermediaries and use evil to maintain power. And some of these evil priests from Egypt are expelled out of Egypt with the Israelites. And the Israelites aren't so bad. Yet they end up being guided by the evil priests after the evil priests eliminate Moses and then start genociding and exterminating the Canaanites. And then the Israelites aren't so bad. The Israelites are distinct from Judah. So Israel would be called the northern kingdom of Israel. They have a common heritage with Solomon and David, and then they split. And basically all of the northern tribes of Israel, they have this great leader called Jehu, who exterminates all of the evil priests. Yet all of those evil priests, they all take hold in Judah. And Judah is basically the subset of the tribes that accepted the dominance of these evil priests. I had to cut and switch phones. The other phone is out of storage, so there will be a cut in here. And I'm gonna adjust the speed of some of this because I'm talking pretty slowly in some of this, and I'm composing this. I got to give you the whole picture so it makes sense. And yep, we got to go back a couple thousand years for this all to make sense because we're talking about the power dynamics and what's going on in the world today. And to understand the grand narrative, everything fits into place when you have an accurate narrative of human history. So we have this ongoing battle of good versus evil, and the evil takes hold in Judah, and the northern Israel tribes of Israel, they're all the good ones. And after they have to, this isn't gonna be perfect, but basically they become one and the same with Samaria, which is so the good Samaritan, the Christ loving people who are good, despite being in an area which is part of it is geographic. When you have a depression below sea level, there's a proclivity for evil being below sea level, just like you have like the holy priest in the high Tibetan area, at very high altitudes, being of a lofty height and being very kind of peaceful and transcendent. When you have place down in a depression, New Orleans is another example of it. You've got all this kind of debauchery and voodoo and all sorts of things going on, and New Orleans is only like tens of feet below sea level. When you get around the Dead Sea, right around where Sodom and Gomorrah were, they are like hundreds of meters below sea level. So it's not like saying these are bad people. It's like here's a geography that's going to have a proclivity for evil. And then you have priests coming out of this ruling system, and these priests have a proclivity for evil, for human sacrifice, for child mutilation, for child sacrifice, and it's about trauma-based mind control and mass psychosis. So the goal of the priests, the priestly class, the scribes, the Pharisees, back then they're the only ones who are writing and who are conveying history, and they've picked up all of this knowledge from ancient writings in Egypt, but what they focus on is what is going to maintain power. So it wasn't until after they eliminated Moses, who was by all accounts a good person, that they then the evil priests decided to mutilate all of the children, and then of their own children, and then start genociding the Canaanites. And yet still the tribes of Israel, after they then settle in some of that land, most of them reject these priests, these evil um, Baal worshippers, Moloch worshippers. It's like it's all just about power. So different, whatever. Like they'll put up idols. They'll. It's just about mass psychosis. They need to get the mass of the population to be in fear, and to hurt themselves out of their own psychosis, and to rely on the priests as the intermediaries for truth. Because if the populace grows up in lies and delusions, they're much easier to control. So the Romans really didn't like the Jews at all. It was like the worst commission of any place to be. They didn't want to be there. The Romans didn't want to kill Jesus. They didn't find any fault with Jesus, and yet the governor has to maintain order in this most evil culture in the realm of everything that the Romans dominated. And a year or two before the Jews demanded Jesus be killed, which he wasn't killed. He was crucified, but he wasn't killed. He was taken down from the cross after having been nailed to a cross for several hours, maybe a handful of hours. He was never stabbed in the gut. He probably fainted from the pain and the exhaustion. And then the Romans, who didn't actually want to kill them, worked with a good Jewish person to take him down. And the tomb that he was delivered to was this good Jewish person who petitioned the Roman to be able to take Jesus down from the crucifix. And then they put him there. And then the next day, Saturday, so all of the Jews on Saturday, they're all like staying in their area. And then that's when Jesus goes on the road and leaves, and then he crosses the road with some of the like his disciples. And then at first they don't recognize him, but there's no miracles, right? There's no miracles. If you read the original Bible, it's a story of a man who exorcises demons, which is the fundamental nature of reality. See, all of the programming is to get you to believe in lies. So I'm going to give you a true narrative, and you can test the resonance within you to see what is true. So Jesus isn't some like, yes, he's exorcising demons, and that's something we can all do. Every one of us can align with truth, can align with Christ, can recognize demons, can call them out, and can drive them forth. For the demons cannot exist simultaneously in the light of truth. So Christianity, people being aligned with Christ, is a direct threat to these priests whose whole purpose is lies, power, and keeping the population in a state of mass formation psychosis. And nothing has changed over the millennia. It's all the same. It's the same story repeating. If you understand the story, you can see the story repeating. So now we're going to get to the origin of Judeo-Christianity, Judeo-Christians. How is it that these two things, which are inverse, basically one is a system of control over the populace utilizing lies and fear. How is it that that then becomes conjoined with the idea of Christ and Christians who are not about controlling other people, but are about humbling themselves before an omnipresent God and aligning with Christ to cultivate Christ within themselves? How is it that these two get conjoined? So it's all connected in this story, and that's why I had to start the story where I started the story. So the Romans, roughly 30 years after they crucified Jesus at the demands of the Jews. So one little tangent is, so Jesus is a disciple of John the Baptist, who John the Baptist is who Jesus calls the most holy man of the time. There's a Roman centurion that Jesus calls the most faithful man of the time, I believe, or in all of Judea. But John is the holiest man. John is who baptizes Jesus in Christ. So in the lineage of Christ relative to Jesus, John the Baptist is who christens Christ, who baptizes Christ, who awakens Christ within Jesus. And Jesus only goes on his teachings for like a year or two, not very long. John, on the other hand, was living in the wilderness, teaching the good news, baptizing people for a long time. They were both about the same age when they died, and they both died for similar reasons. So the Jewish king, Herod, I believe, beheads the holiest man in the land, John the Baptist, because his wife's sister, who he marries after his wife's sister's brother, he marries his brother's wife, and then his brother's wife's daughter does a sexy little dance for him, and he says, he gets seduced by her because the Saduce is one of the branches of this control mechanism. So you have the priests, who are the Pharisees, and then you have the Sadducees, who are the women, who the male and the female energies of evil, essentially, of lies, of power, of control. So the the king is so seduced by the daughter of his brother's wife, who he marries, that he offers the girl half of the entire kingdom because he was so seduced by this dance. And instead, the evil little creature says, I would rather have you cut off John the Baptist's head and deliver it to me on a platter. And why does she say that? Because that's what her mommy told her to tell him. So her mom, who was married to his brother, who then seduces the king, wants to kill the holiest man. So that's why John the Baptist was killed, because at the heights of power of this evil power cult, there's nothing that she wants more than to kill an actual holy person who's just out in the desert baptizing people and speaking the truth. That's a direct threat to those who get their power off of lies and the control of people, because once the people get the truth, they can no longer be controlled, and therefore they have to kill the truth speaker in order for the lies to maintain their dominance. There's a little bit of resonance there. You can see it's the same story again and again. We're going to get to Charlie, but it's the exact same story. So Judeo-Christianity, the Romans destroyed the Jewish temple. The Jews are just too much. Like they tried to just, the Jews rebelled against the Roman rule, and so the Romans come and they besiege Jerusalem, and they destroy the temple and slaughter a bunch of them. I don't know, enslave a bunch. I don't know exactly. But after that, so that's about 30 years after Jesus is crucified. So the I'm getting to the Knights Templar, basically. So the Knights Templar is the origin story of Judeo-Christianity. So it's these poor Christians, soldiers, knights. So they are like aristocrats within Christianity who are bankrupt, and therefore they become mercenaries and sell swords to the Jewish temple. So it's the poor knights of the Temple of Solomon. So the Pharisees, after, and then they make their headquarters on the Temple Mount, essentially, of the ruined temple that the Romans had destroyed. What was, I don't know if that was Solomon's temple or whatever. Um, it was a place of sacrifice where they sacrificed animals, like on this rock, and then there's a hole in the rock, and then the blood goes down into like this lower chamber, which is what the Dome of the Rock now sits over, and you're not allowed to go in there. And I went to Israel, I went to Jerusalem several right before COVID-19, right when COVID-19 was starting, the day after Trump killed Soleimani, and it was clear that anyways, I was just called to do so, and I went for the only purpose was to go to see this Dome of the Rock, to see this location that has been so important in history, and to get a feel for it myself. And my personal anecdotal experience is that there's absolutely nothing magical there. It's really it's an awful place. The people there, they stole from me. They um, abused me, I guess. They took in they everything about it was really just was no good, except for the cats. There's some cool cats in the old city and along the walls and stuff. So I met some cool cats, but I mean, there's gonna be cool cats everywhere you go because cats are just always cool. Um, and then they didn't let me in. Well, not they at that point being the Muslims. They don't let anyone into the thing. They have three conditions that people can enter the Dome of the Rock, and three exceptions, like visiting sovereigns, people going on an educative thing, and then there's one other condition I forgot. And so I went, and then I had to talk to some doctor, and some sheik. They said, "Yo, you got to talk to this sheik if you want to get in." There's like certain visiting hours. This is like a bit of tangent, but this is gonna be a kind of long, random vlog. But I'm gonna explain everything, and I have some anecdotal whatever to mix in as well. So you're supposed to go there at like 8 in the morning or something, like after prayers. Like I didn't know any of this. I didn't even know. Like I had a dream, and then like when I was doing my dream journaling, like a voice spoke to me and basically told me to go to the Temple Mount. And the next day, I got on a plane and flew to Jerusalem, and paid for it with cryptocurrency. And I didn't even realize until like I'm like maybe the layover in New York that they wouldn't actually let me into the Temple Mount because they only let Muslims in. Uh but then they're like, oh, there's some exceptions, and so I like get there. The first day I was too late, so I go early the next morning. I get there at like 7 a.m. or something, and like I'm just ignorant. I don't know what the hell is going on. There's no line. I have to go to the shit gate, as the Muslims call it, because they control all the other gates to the Temple Mount. But the Jews built some other gate. I think the Muslims call it the Dung Gate or something. So the day before when I went there was like a whole bunch of tour buses lined up, and there's a line like a mile long. And then I paid this Muslim guide to like take me there, and then he tried to like just total shyster move. He tried to like take me to some other place, and then he tried to like it was just everyone I met there, except for the guy who made some food outside of the Temple Mount. It was all just shisty as can be. Oh, and then there's another guy, I think probably a Muslim, or he could have been Armenian, who a Christian guy, who had a really cool shop. So I met like the guy who I got food from after they kicked me out of the Temple Mount area, and then this other guy who had a cool store. But everyone else was super shisty, and the whole thing is just shisty and run down. And the I guess it would have been the Knights Templars Citadel there, or I don't know, whatever. The Citadel there was kind of cool, and it kind of inspired some of the architecture of my Citadel here. So, anyways, I tried to go in. I go in there at like 7 a.m., and that's the time of prayers. So there's no line. And I was like, oh, I must have got here early. There's literally no one here. So there's some armed like guards there, and I'm like walking up the shit gate like by myself. There's no one there, and they just look like confused. But they're like, all right, we're not gonna stop you. And so basically, I got there when probably like the prayers were starting or something like that. And then so I'm like walking around as they're going in for prayers, and I like try to go in, and then they're not gonna let me in, and then they like almost kicked me out. But then they told me to go talk to this doctor, or maybe it was a sheik. No, first they tell me to go talk to a sheik, and if I get permission from the sheik, then I can go in. And then I go find the sheik. I can't find the sheik, and these guys give me the runaround. I'm looking for this sheik. And then they're like, no, you got to talk to this doctor. So then I go look for this doctor, and I'm like walking around these back alleys of like this old city, and like this, it almost looks like I'm going into some residence, and like they point. And then finally, I come across like a doctor and a sheik. I think I started to talk to the doctor, and then like the sheik. I think he's the sheik. I don't know. He didn't really introduce himself. He's like looking over my shoulder as I'm talking to this doctor, and the doctor is like doing everything he can to stand in my way. And he's like, oh yeah, there's these three exceptions. Like you have to be this, and I'm like, that's me. Each one of those is me. I was like, I'm a visiting sovereign. Here's my name, and therefore let me in. And then he denies me once. Then I'm like, all right. And then I was like, all right, what's the next reason? He's like, well, you got to be a group of people for educative purpose, and then there can be exceptions. I was like, that's me. I look like one person, but there's a group of us here, and we're here for educative purposes. And he shuts me down the second time, and then he gives me a third reason. I was like, that's me. I'm here. And then I argued that, and he denied me a third time. And he was getting totally flustered. He just like wanted me to get out of there. But the sheik, I think he was the sheik. I don't know. He's got like an office right next to the doctor. The dude was like silent and wise, and he was just like overlooking the whole thing, and he was pretty dope. but I never talked to him. He was just kind of like witnessing this doctor get all flustered, denying me. So, yeah, that's the end of my anecdote of trying to get in to this place, and they're denying me. And the whole thing is, it's like the Muslims didn't. The whole history starts with like the Jew, or I don't know. There's different stories. There's one of the stories is that Isaac is gonna like sacrifice his son there, or that he's guided, or someone's guided to like, this is the rock where you gotta give the blood sacrifices, and then this is where you gotta set up your city, and I don't know the exact history of it. So I just went on my own to figure it out, and I learned a lot of stuff, and it was interesting. And I was gonna stay there for like a week, but after 2 days, I was like, this isn't it. And I was also looking for like answers, but also kind of like a mystical, magical place, and that clearly wasn't it. So then I went from there to Athens, and well, I was gonna go see the pyramids, but you can't fly from Israel to Egypt for like diplomatic reasons. But then I figured out you could fly to Greece, to Athens, so I did like a round trip to there, and I did find the magic in Athens. Athens is absolutely magical, and I highly recommend it. And I found everything that I was looking for in Athens. Um, and I bet that's where Jesus went next. He probably went to Greece. He probably went to Athens. He might have kept going further up to kind of Europe. So right, that's the end. So Judeo-Christians is the Jews hire these poor knights who call themselves Christians, and then they become the Knights Templar, and then that's like the start of Judeo-Christianity. So the Jews have all this money and banking and connections with trade, and then they're like scattered throughout the Roman Empire, and they also have connections like going all the way back to the Phoenicians and Carthage, and then the Carthaginian and all these trade connections, and the Carthaginians then moving after the Romans conquered them, and then there's all this history. But anyways, there's also a whole thing in the Jew kind of like prophecy or whatever, where they're like, we're not supposed to have another nation because we're so evil and we can't be trusted to have a nation. Therefore, our role is to be like dispersed and then to just like profit off of this whatever. And so one thing I want to make clear is that Judaism, it's a cult, it's a religion based off of power and lies, and it's not an ethnicity. The idea that it's an ethnicity is a lie. So there is no ethnicity that is Judaism. That's another lie. There's Semites, and all Arabs are Semites. It's like a locale. It's a region where, and that has shared linguistic roots, but there's all these lies tied in, and Israel does not equal Jews. I mean, the actual tribes of Israel were the good ones. So Israel was like they would call them the northern tribes. They're the one who rejected the evil priests that took hold in Judah. And then they like a lot of them moved to Samaria to be like good Samaritans. And they like ally, like not all of them, they're not necessarily conquered by the Assyrians. Like they kind of ally with them in a way. It's kind of complicated, and then they don't all get redistributed, like enslaved and sent to like Babylon, Iraq, whatever. It's like 1/5 of them do, and then some of, anyways. So we're sticking with our story that ends with Charlie. And so Judeo-Christianity starts with the Knights Templars. And the Knights Templars, it's a military order, and it's hand in hand with the banking establishment that the Jews monopolize, because the Christians aren't allowed to practice usury because usury is evil. But the Jews have no issue with it, and that's just another way to gain more power and control, and so it works perfectly with their ideology. And so the Knights Templars help, and then the Catholic Church in the 3rd and 4th century gets the original Bible that Saint Marcion composed in the 2nd century. I've got like 144 AD, 128 AD in that period. Is Saint Marcion compiling the original Bible, but then in like the 3rd and 4th centuries and the Council of Nicaea, these people in power and bankers and Jews and kings and priests that all they create the Council of Nicaea, and they formulate what is the Judeo-Christian Bible, which is mostly just the Jewish Bible. More than 75% of the Judeo-Christian Bible is the Jewish Bible. You open it up and it starts with the Genesis of the Jews, which is some lies written down that have it's not they basically it's complicated as to whether it's all lies or not, but basically it's all the Jewish Bible, and then they stick the Bible that Saint Marcion composed basically at the end of the Judeo-Christian Bible. So anyone normal person who reads a book, you start at page 1. So if you want to read the Judeo-Christian Bible, or like what you think is the Bible, you open on page 1 and you get Genesis. It starts with blah blah blah. That's the Jewish Bible. So the first 3/4 plus of what you think is the Bible is the Jewish Bible, and then they stick the Christian Bible at the end. So if you are a Christian and you're not familiar with the original Bible, which has no Judeo in it, then you're not a Christian. And if you're a Judeo-Christian, you're not a Jew, and you're not a Christian. You're a slave that's serving two masters, and because your ideology is broken and discontiguous, you don't have any true foundation, and therefore you become enslaved by lies, because without the truth, then the lies reign supreme. So at some point, the dichotomy between the Knights Templars, who are basically just the mercenaries of the Jews, they become into conflict with the Catholic Church, which is like maybe 25% Christian and 75% Jewish. And the 25% that's like Christian, well, they're basically just different power structures. But basically, on Friday the 13th in like the 14th century or something, the Catholic Church goes to war against the Knights Templars. And they destroy it, and then they steal all their money, and they consolidate the money, and then they brutally torture and kill all of the Knights Templars they can find, all of the mercenaries that serve the Jews. And then the Jews have to reorganize this this order of the people who will do their bidding, but they have to do it in secret, like in a secret society. And so what they do is they create the Freemasons, and so they give it a new name. They're not Knights of the Temple, like that's too obvious. Knights of the Temple, a military order serving the Temple of Jerusalem. They have to give it a new name. They have to call it Freemasons. See, they're not serving the Jews, they're free, and they're not knights, they're masons, they're stone builders. And the Catholic Church is dependent upon masons, and so to build all of their cathedrals and things, so they're the places of worship from which they can enact their control and ensure their power and dominance over the populaces, and where they can put forth these ritualistic practices to indoctrinate the populaces with this trauma-based mind control and magical thinking, and teaching them lies so that the people have no rooting in actual truth. Isn't it amazing that in 1 hour I can give you a whole history of humanity? That is if this isn't deleted, but most likely it will be because the truth is anathema in this culture of lies, this fallen culture that we've been born into. And so the Freemasons are established, and also there's the Protestant thing that happens, and the English church that is set up. That's like the revenge against the Catholics, basically via um, certainly the English one. The German one is slightly confusing because the German one starts out really anti-Jewish, like Martin Luther. Like they're very anti-Jewish. So that's like a different. It's almost like that's kind of the origin story more of the what they would call now the globalists. So you'll have Alex Jones and like a lot of other people who say the globalists are the real bad guys and don't want to talk about the Jews really at all. And so then the other power, the crown in, so this is where it gets a little bit confusing because a lot of the like the Rothschilds and this the wealth it's there's a lot of it in like Austria and then the Holy Roman Empire, which would be like Germany now, and how like this power and wealth moves around over the centuries and millennia and what it's aligned with. It's largely banking, and the Jews kind of spread out and use their far superior knowledge of human engineering to capture all of these different cultures. So, like in Khazaria, that's basically the Jews moving in and taking over the Mongols. They move into like Germany and Venice and Italy and North Africa, and then to the Netherlands and these trade routes and these um, companies for trade, and then they create the central banks, and then in England is a kind of interesting story of like a mixing pool of all of that, but it's always about divide and rule, and so the Crown of England becomes a big counterforce against the Catholics, as does the Protestantism, because the Jews have to get their revenge against the Catholics who stole so much of their wealth when they eliminated the Knights Templar. But it's not like there's good guys and bad guys in this story. Like they're both bad guys, but they're just fighting for wealth and power. And so we've got from like Judeo-Christians, Knights Templars, Freemasons, and we're on our way to Charlie Kirk, who is basically like a PR salesman for Judeo-Christians. That's basically his whole spiel and what he's hired to do. And it's kind of if you look at his father was a Mason. Trump is a Mason. His father worked for Trump. His wife worked for Trump. Her father was some rich person. She worked with the military and child words I can't say, but like, where they become slaves and abused and stuff in Romania. And that's all connected, if to not directly, but it's all in parallel, the same thing going on with Epstein, all the people surrounding Trump through his father and his entire life. He's really like there was a whole time when I thought all like his whole like thing it would be humorous, and for a while it kind of is humorous if they're in the realm of like politics, left versus right, and like the absurdities in that kind of like clown show. It's like really funny. But then when he's then in a position of power and he's just making up all of these things that's causing millions of people to die, and he's directly murdering people constantly and just giving you these, now lying to the populace and gaslighting the populace. And it's just like, it's just pure evil. And Charlie was finding his way out of that. And for a while, I was at about a 2/3 probability that the whole thing was fake, staged, and it's still a high probability that Charlie, that the whole thing was, I mean, it was definitely staged, but I mean, whether or not Charlie actually died. Now I'm back into, at first I was sure he died. Then there was a period where I was about 2/3 thinking that the whole thing was fake. And I can give you all of these data points. I'm not just like making this up. It's like looking deeply into so many data points to reach these conclusions, or to form an analysis, to probabilities, to get to the truth, because that's what, like it's important to be rooted in truth. It's the most important thing we can do in our life, is to be aligned with truth. If we're aligned with truth, all of our actions will be in alignment with truth. But as soon as we let the lie in, it's like a seed of corruption, and it will grow. So like all of the people who believed in the moon landing story. It's like a lie, a seed, a lie was planted within them, and they went about the rest of their lives believing this lie. The same people who believe in the official narrative regarding 9/11. So we're taught this lie, and it's connected with this trauma-based mind control. And when you believe in the lie, you end up living a lie, and you end up being fed upon by the purveyors of the lies. They're like parasites that take the power of truth away from you, and they take it onto themselves. And then you live in this purgatory state of being lost and not having the truth, where they retain the truth, and then they get money and power off of your state of, I would call it sin, to be without, which is the fundamental meaning of sin. And the fundamental tenet of Judaism is that all of the male children have to live in sin because they've been mutilated as an infant. And then the seed of that also takes root in the women who allow their little boys to be mutilated, so that the entire culture, all of the men of the culture, they live in sin, and all of the women in the culture are all corrupted by their toleration of that. And Jesus said it would be better to tie a millstone around their neck and cast them into sea than for them to cause one of the children to live in sin. But Peter, Simon, Peter, the little pebble, Jesus tried to call him bread. Jesus related himself with bread. And then he tried his greatest adversary, Simon, who he'd call Peter the bread. And so he would try to relate with his greatest adversary who would who would oppose Jesus, who would put himself in front of Jesus, who was the it's funny, whether it's a small rock or a big rock, it's like a little pebble cast in front of Jesus. Like that little pebble doesn't really stand in my way. I mean, it stands in my way, but it doesn't prevent me from continuing. And yet when Jesus isn't there, that little pebble is a rock. It's a big rock upon which this whole church is founded. This whole church of opposing Jesus. And the one person in the Bible that Jesus calls Satan is Simon, Peter, the first patriarch of the Catholic Church. Satan, the only person that Jesus calls Satan, because he's the adversary of Jesus. and he's all based in ego, and he wants everything to be around him, and his only concern is, well, when Jesus is gone, who are you guys going to follow? Who's going to be the head of this cult thing that we apparently have formed because we're following this dude around who's purging these demons, and he told us to follow him, and we didn't know anything else to do, and so they just followed him and watched him seemingly do miracles. But it's not miracles, it's within the power of every bearer of truth to drive forth demons. And as soon as you have the truth, it's not a question. You'll witness it time and time again, and it'll be a practice, and you'll grow greater in your strength of truth. And the greater the truth that you have the capacity to be in alignment with, the greater the reaction of the demon infested evil ones will be to your presence, and they'll flee before you in every single instance. And yet they'll try from afar, they'll try to cast illusions, they'll try to cast lies upon you. And that's what all of COVID-19 was. And it was clear that, anyways, without getting on tangents, so it took 33 hours for 33 hours. It took 33 hours. So the 33 in the Freemasons, there's degrees of Masons, and one of the degrees of Masons is the Knights Templar. They don't hide it. They know that they are the continuation of the Knights Templar, but they had to change their name, and they had to occlude themselves to do so. But they have 33 degrees of indoctrination, basically. So if you think about, like, in everyday society, you've got your bachelor's degree, your master's degree, your doctorate degree. These are degrees of indoctrination, of lies, in which they indoctrinate you into their control system and make you their bitch. Which is why all the doctors who have been the most indoctrinated were the most susceptible to all the lies of the COVID agenda, and they were the ones out there actively purveying the poisons, which the what would we call them, the progenitors of that whole agenda were pitching, I guess. Right. We're going to Charlie. Anyways, though, 33, the 33 significance, it's relative to Masons. And it's a sign. It's like, oh, we caught the guy in 33 hours. It's like it was a Mason hit against Charlie. So what Charlie was doing is he was turning away from his masters. He was questioning this. He was asking questions. He was noticing things. And he was saying that I will have to no longer support the Jewish cause. In the days before he died, he said, they're going to kill me. He knew they were going to kill him. And so to understand, so the key part in this whole narrative is to understand that the Freemasons are the same as the Knights Templars, who are mercenaries who serve the Jews. And when I say the Jews, what I mean is this cult of power, which is the Pharisees and the scribes, and it's about and lies. It's all about purveying lies, trauma-based mind control, mass formation psychosis, in order to control the populaces and profit off of them. So Trump is a Mason. And you can see in all of his actions, he's subservient to Bibi Netanyahu. And Bibi is basically the male energy of Judaism. And his wife, the ugly pig Sarah, is the female embodiment of the Jewish religion or whatever. Except it's like, how can someone so disgusting and horrid and ugly seduce anyone? But that's the whole thing, is that when you are such an ugly soul, and everything you're about is so ugly. Obviously, the person ends up ugly. You could say that it's subjective, and obviously it will instantly reflect on me. And I'm not claiming to be some image of beauty at all, but I challenge anyone in the world, anyone, to look at Sarah Netanyahu and not say that is a fat, ugly pig. Like, honestly. And I've had pigs that have actually been very lovable and just so cute and lovable and adorable. So it's an insult to pigs to call Sarah Netanyahu a pig. Um, but it's just really it's like a orc, like a orc nosed, just disgusting creature. Um, and obviously, BB doesn't have any interest in her. I'm sure he's more interested in like little boys, and like babies probably. Um, I posted this link. Oh god, I don't even want to get into it. But how evil it is, and you see what these priests in this evil cult, what they do to their own children and their neighbors' children, and what probably was done to them when they were a child, and what's normalized. It's all so dark. It's so dark that like the average person, you can't even imagine how dark and evil it is. But that is the purpose of a light worker, is to be able to face all of it, to not hate them and to not react to it, but just to see it as it is. It's just evil. And I learned today about Jehu, and I didn't know anything about him. I was searching. I was searching for like which which person massacred the followers of Moloch, and then I got like two answers, and they're like, well, Josiah did Moloch, but Jehu like massacred the followers of Baal. And then so I learned about Jehu, and he's like way more base than, I don't even know if I was looking for Josiah in the first place. Rome was founded on a false flag where the shipwrecked, basically mercenaries of, they call themselves like Romulus and Remulon or whatever. They say they're like from Venus, like the planet. It's like called a god, but back then the god is like the planet in the sky. So they like self-associate in their origin story as they're basically an alien species, which, I mean, anyway, I won't get too far into it. But anyways, the parallel is that the foundation of Rome is based upon a false flag, where these mercenary people invite all the friendly people nearby who don't want to cavort with these shipwrecked mercenaries, and then they stage this event. We're gonna have this great event with games and everything, and we'll show you we're worthy of being good neighbors, and that you should let us marry some of your women because we're really friendly, and we're gonna have these friendly games and competitions. And so they invite their neighbors, and then they have this big event, and then when they're there, then they take out the weapons, and then they slaughter all the men, and then they take the women prisoner. And that's how Rome is started. Did you not know? That's what Rome's all about. And that's the First Reich, and then there's like a Second Reich, and they try to redo that in Germany. Or I forget which one's the Second Reich. The Third Reich is like the Nazis in Germany, but it's this just pure evil and lies and false flags. But what I love about Jehu is that he's like the inversion of that, because he does the same false flag, but he uses it against the evil one. So he's like, hey, let's have a big ceremony of child sacrifice and worship of our demonic cult leaders, and let's get all the priests and all the Baal worshippers together. We're gonna have the greatest sacrifice ever. And he was like a soldier and was like sent by a prophet, sent him a messenger, and he's like, you got to kill all these fucking evil people because we're just doomed with them in charge. And he does it. So he gets them all together, and he slaughters all these evil priests and these like demon worshippers and child sacrificers, and then tears down their temple and turns it into a public latrine. And that's just like, oh, hallelujah. That's like how you know that Israel is good. And Israel is mostly good. I mean, the tribes of Israel, it's like 10 out of 12 or 13 were all good. It was just like one, I mean, two or maybe three that were so corrupted and lost in lies and power hungry that that stayed evil. But still, it's like that's like 10 out of 13 were good, and the rest, Judah, that's not Israel. That's those who they end up warring against Israel. So there's a divide. The good ones are Israel. The bad ones are Judah, who are the Jews, who it's not an ethnicity, it's a cult about power and control. So all the people today who are like, yeah, we're Jewish, but we're atheists, it's like you're fucking retarded. You're associating with a religion which has so broken you with lies that, and they're just lost. But Christianity was meant to be a cure to Judaism, because that's what Jesus was a conqueror, and his whole purpose was to conquer the demons of this demonic culture and to exorcise the demons and to fill them with Christ and to show them the way to Christ. But while many of them did and were saved as the result of Jesus, those who turn away from him end up 7 times as evil as they were, or times seven. Anyways, they end up multiplied more evil, because when the truth comes to your doorstep and you turn your back on it and scorn the truth, you're doubling down on evil. You're getting way worse. So everything that happened to Charlie Kirk was staged. And now I do believe that he was eliminated. The whole thing was staged, and there's lots of lies surrounding it. The event itself was only announced 24 hours prior to the event happening, which is entirely unusual. And Charlie Kirk probably didn't even know about it because everything is so siloed. He wasn't planning the events. He wasn't behind any of that. It's a whole organization that had a budget of like, I think over $100 million a year or something, or tens of millions at the very least. And he's surrounded, like in the Truman Show, Charlie. Uh, he's surrounded by controllers, including his wife, and so his wife grew up. Well, I don't know all of her history, but she ends up somehow having like just ends up in a Trump directly sent her a letter. Trump knew her dad, or I don't know, it's really confusing, but he just like sent her a letter. He's like, "Come work for me, and you're the most beautiful. You would win a beauty pageant. You should enroll." And she just becomes the beauty pageant leader, and then she goes straight from the beauty pageant to running a child orphanage, and other things going on in Romania, which it's like, how do you get from here to there? And working for the military on a military base, getting these children who then are getting abused. And the one person she shouts out about this whole experience is the colonel on the rape in chart on the base in charge of the word I just said I was trying not to say, with all of these children that are basically see, there's so much control, and I'm talking to you on a platform which is controlled by these powers, and so like my video is not going to get any reach. If I speak any truth, it's like maybe 5 people will see it, but whatever. As it's like it's impungent upon me. I often use that word wrongly. I don't know if it's right, but I think I've looked this up several times. I think if you look at the definition of the word, it won't really make sense. But then if you like look really deep at the etymology and further definitions of the word, it will make sense. But it's impungent upon me to tell the truth, even if it's not going to reach more than maybe 1 or 2 people. But anyways, this is all important, right? To have a narrative and to understand where you are in history, how we got to where we are in the present moment, and who killed Charlie. And so part of it is, how was Charlie killed? So Charlie was not a person to wear jewelry. I've got a little. You could call this. Oh wait, where's the thing on my hair? I don't know. I've got some platinum and gold in my hair. You could call that jewelry, because it's a real Jew thing to to do that. But I don't do it for the same reasons. I do it for elemental reasons, as far as core elements of the earth being with me everywhere I go. If I had like a sweet tungsten thing, I'd probably carry that with me too. I do have some tungsten, which is another core element. Platinum, uranium, gold, tungsten. These are core elements. Um, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So, and then Erica Kirk, she's been wearing like these giant Masonic rings now everywhere she goes. Two of them. One's like a big G, and one of them's like a, I don't know, these big Masonic rings. So, and then Cash Patel, he's giving out the script. 33 hours. It was a Masonic hit. And the president, Trump, he's a Mason. And so basically, the order came down. And also, right before Charlie's killed, they're talking about like public executions. Josh Hammer, he's like, yeah, we based Trump talking about public executions. BB right before, he's like, oh, we got to open an eighth front in the war, which is the war in America and propaganda, and like to keep the propaganda pure, Jew, lie, evil. And so a public execution had to happen in order for that war front to really make some progress. And so this event was staged just like right before. Well, it was announced the day before to make sure the people outside of this whole stage thing weren't going to be there, and so that it was mostly just like people like in on this. Like Mormons is basically the whole Mormon religion. It's all just a giant cult, and they have to fit in with the wider control system. And there's all sorts of military and CIA in this place where this event happened. And then there's all this for planning these searches in DC and Israel about the specific people, Tyler Robinson and the Losi Center and the surgeon and these people. It's like um, right after Charlie Kirk's event, like Turning Point, the USA event or whatever, where Tucker Carlson and was there, and then Dave Smith debates Josh Hammer and just destroys him, and they see that like the base, the young Republicans are turning away from Israel, and this not even turning away from Judeo Christianity yet, because that's like a little bit deeper. Like people, it takes a bit to really get into all that, to question that. Like Candace is there. Candace is there, and yet where's Candace been the last 2 weeks? She's getting attacked, and she's going to be getting it from hopefully she's not getting it from her husband as well. Her husband is well tied in with the whole Catholic thing, and Catholics might be like 25% Christian, but they're still 75% Jewish. And so, well, I just hope that her husband, who's in some sort of Catholic order, I don't really understand which order he's in, but he's like a deep Catholic agent where he's like going to church every day, and like if you're going to church every day. Anyways, I don't need to get all into it. Like, it's not even disputed that he's basically like a super Catholic agent person. And there and his dad's a lord in the British thing. Um but they could be good. And I'm not gonna make any assumptions that they have anything but a perfect, holy, divine union, and all of the fruits coming out of Candace demonstrates that, and she doesn't get to where she is without a good man working with her. And so while I have seen other people cast doubt and dispersions upon her husband and her, I will not do the same thing. And everything that I've seen from Candace um, shows me that she is aligned with truth. And yes, she makes mistakes. But really, from my perspective, I am alone in the world, and Candace is the closest human being that I'm aligned with. There's lots of like animals that are just perfect Christ spirits, and I just love animals so much. Um, but Candace is really the only other human I can like really respect and call a peer, basically. Um, but she is also in a different position than me. I'm ready to die every day. She has a family that if you want to shut Candace up and you start threatening her kids, that's going to have a lot more influence and ability to shut her up than what anyone can do to me. I don't have those leverage points. Um, my whole purpose in this world is to be on point, and the heathens will always flee before me. And what that leaves me with is isolation, seclusion, and like imposed externally, like if you're quarantining somebody. And that's also why it's important for me to build like a very visible castle on a hill, symbol, raise my flag high, make a high tower, make sure everyone can see it, so that you can't, like, they people, I don't know, like some Jew plot. um there's a ball field here where the public comes, and there's soccer and there's baseball there, and the public goes down there and they can see there's a castle on the hill from the thing. So there's some evil Jew mercs, Jew Jew slaves, who are trying to petition the town to move the field. It's like a perfectly field. It's already built there. They're like, let's move the field somewhere else. They don't have any idea where to put it. There's no like better place to put it. The field's already there, but they don't want people to see the castle on the hill. But it's all right. And just like the majority of the people, like the subscribers and like supposed views, are just gonna be not real. There's probably about 3 people who will watch this, and it'll give them context. They won't believe everything that I'm saying because they're not rooted in truth. But if they would do something like a reboot, a system reboot, and they were purging all of their past programming, and then they came across this from a blank slate, they would be like, it would be akin to like Usain Bolt being told, like, did you know if you ran on a track and you let us time you, we would call you the fastest person in the world? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm not a like track athlete. They're like, yeah, but would you just like do that? And like, you'll just, is that a good analogy? I don't know. Something about speed and like, basically, if you're on a journey of truth and you just like inherit a whole bunch of truth, you're gonna be way better off than just starting. You'll be like 15 years ahead of where you would otherwise be. Where I started, where I had no guides to teach me, but I did know enough to know that I had to reboot myself because I realized, or maybe I didn't realize, maybe I was just guided, but I realized I was full of lies and programming, and evil and corruption that I had taken on as a result of the environment in which I grew up. And I'm not like saying like familial, but like public school and just the general pop culture. All of it is corrupt and fallen. And like I watched a video the other day of high schoolers in like the 90s, like it was like the 90s or 80s. It was like graduation day at high school, and I literally cried. It was like I'm like almost about to cry right now just thinking about it. It was so it's just so sad how far the culture has fallen in like 40 years. It's like unbelievable. You see the people then and how competent and happy and energetic and like and just the way that they're all interacting, and you compare it to the people today getting out of high school where they're all like introverts on their phone just like repeating memes like mindlessly with no orientation in life. And it's just like, wow, the this world isn't like, oh god. So anyways, the Masons organized or covered up the hit. The Mormons, the military, helped to facilitate the hit. It was ordered by the Jews. And when I say the Jews, I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about the ideology of Judah. The priests who follow this, even the image of what you would think of as Satan is just an image of like Baal, of like this horned like bull thing that like is where the priests would make the child sacrifices and pass the children through the fire. um so where I went to high school, after my mom uprooted me and my brother and took us out to Colorado to marry this rancher, and then she divorced him because that's not important. But anyways, then we moved to the Evergreen School District because she kind of shopped around where to go based off of what seemed to be the best school districts. And Evergreen had the best school district because it had the wealthiest like population in like a suburb of Denver. And so it just so happens that in that school district, which was representative of like a lot of wealth, there's a lot of Jews. So I had a lot of experience with Jews in high school. And one of my best friends, or I guess he probably was my best friend, for like maybe 2 years in high school or something, was people called him the Jew. In many ways, you could say he's a stereotypical Jew. And what I want to say is that there's nothing wrong with the person. There's everything wrong with the ideology. And I want to make that ultimately clear. So I have no conflict with Jewish people. I have a conflict with Judaism. I have a conflict with the choice to mutilate babies. I have a conflict with, and so it's like this whole cult that's thousands of years old. You can trace it all the way back to basically the downfall of the pharaohs and how that culture fell from greatness into corruption and disintegration, and then enslaving people, and worse. Um, where this priest class developed ultimately was in Egypt. And um, um, so that's I want I just want to make it clear that redemption is available for every individual. There is nothing inherently evil about Jewish people. It's just that they're born into a more evil environment than other people. So they've got it harder off from the beginning. Just like someone who's born with only one arm, they have to live their life without that other arm. Or someone who's born blind, they have to live their life without sight. Or a deaf person, they have to live their life without being able to hear. That makes it more difficult compared to other people. But that doesn't mean they're evil. That doesn't mean they're inherently bad. It means they've got a harder time of it than other people. However, if a one-armed man decides to cut the arm off of other people so that everyone else also has one arm, that's obviously evil. Um, so as soon as a Jewish person goes to their first, I think it's called a bris or whatever, um, they're forced to tolerate evil if they don't turn away from it right then. I just heard this video the other day. Some guy, he's like, I've been to thousands of brises or infant mutilations. Um, and every one of them, it's a evil, um, it's an evil thing. But, and then even people who are in, like, even the most evil rabbi who's like, let's talk about like Rabbi Shmuley. Even he's not the most evil rabbi. He's like just he's super evil, but he's not the most evil. As far as as far as I know, I don't have all the deets on like the hierarchy of evil of the rabbis, but even Rabbi Shmuley, like he's absolutely disgusting, abhorrent, um, very evil, ugly. But salvation is possible for him in his lifetime. And all that it takes is the choice to repent. And it's not a word, it's a choice. It's a choice to turn away from evil and to turn towards good, to turn towards Christ. Any Jew can renounce being a Jew. You're not ethnically a Jew. You might have been born a Jew, your mom might have been a Jew, and your dad might have been a Jew. But if you renounce Judaism, you're not a Jew. And so part of this idea that it's ethnic, it's part of this whole mind control. This and the whole reason that they mutilate the little boys, it's all about trauma. It's trauma-based mind control, controlling the population. So even if you've been mutilated and you've been born into evil in this evil culture, there's salvation available for you. There's salvation for every single person, no matter how evil they are, because all of that evil is conditioned. And even if it seems like a choice, it's a choice that is incentivized, that seems like the right choice to the person. But when they're confronted with the option to give up the evil and to go towards the good, they can make that choice. And if they don't, they'll get more evil. Maybe 7 times as evil. I don't know the exact mathematics of it. But in facing the truth, every person who sees what I'm saying right now, they have a choice. And the fact that you're facing it and you haven't turned away, it doesn't mean that you've chosen repentance. It doesn't mean that you're going to double down in evil. And if you're just neutral, you're in the middle and you'll just stay right where you're at. But just know that the potential for salvation exists, and it's nothing but a choice. It's a choice to choose good and to stop committing evil, to stop tolerating evil. And that's a choice that Charlie made. And his soul is blessed. And even though he was the spokesman, basically just like a paid PR guy for this evil cult, he now His he's cleansed. His soul is perfect and divine in Christ. His wife, on the other hand, and the man he looked up to, Orange Man Mason, and the whole system, they're fully evil and corrupted. Oh, so let's get to the how, right? I went on a tangent. I said Charlie didn't wear jewelry. And then his controller wife said, basically convinced him to, she gave him this amulet, this St. Michael's cross. And I actually need to look up the whole story of St. Michael. But it's like the story, it's really celebrated in Russia, and Russia is like a huge enemy of this Jewry, and not jewelry. Anyways, I think so Erica gave him this St. Michael's thing to wear as Charlie in his last days renounced the Jewish cause. He was told 3 different people, they're going to kill me, in like the 24 in the 2 days before he was killed. I don't think he realized that his wife was part of the they. And under all of this pressure, even though he wasn't a person to wear a cross, to wear jewelry, Erica gave him this St. Michael's pendant, and under this pressure, he decided to wear this pendant, a symbol of protection. And one of the things that tipped me off to this was a person who was one of my tenants last year. Very interesting person who doesn't really seem very well rooted in truth, and he's always bouncing all around, but he was resonant and respectful and hardworking, and was putting in everything to provide for this woman and her daughter, that it wasn't his daughter, and it was, but like his heart was in the right place, but it was very clear that he's been faced all sorts of evil and darkness, and like so a lot of conditioning, and but his intent always seemed to be in the right place, and is like stressed out and having a hard time of it, but really putting in the work. And when he departed here, was on a trajectory in relation to like a religious trajectory. I think the Catholic Church, but it could have been another church. But anyways, he went to some church and he got this cross pendant, and he took this pendant as like an idol, as like this magical thing, this valuable thing, this cross that he got, that whoever gave it to him imbued it with such meaning to him that this cross became like a magical thing to him. Which is, I mean, I'm not going to get too much into it, but the relevant thing is, at some point he has an experience with this cross, that it's doing some miraculous thing. It's like defying gravity. It's like pushing out, and he's like seeing it for himself, and it's like, this cross is doing something so unusual. It must be God. It must be God. Proof of the religion. And in the exact same way that the evil Jews mark the little babies by mutilating them, the evil Catholics mark the people by having them wear the implement of torture of their Savior. Don't question it. It's symbolic. Brain. It's like misfire. It's like people are having like a brain fuck right now. But anyway, so he like saw this thing, and so the thing that was given to him, it's like you can, and this has been going on for a very long time. Like that's what they would do in most of these like Catholic churches. They would have like the remains of saints, or they would have like a statue that would cry, and people would go on pilgrimage to be like, oh, it's a miracle. Oh, praise God, the water from the statue. Or maybe they have like a magnetic setup and people don't know about magnets and they're like, oh, it's gravity defying. We cannot explain the magic of Jesus. Um, so they're just simple lies, simple tricks just to get the person to buy into the lie. So, um, Erica gives him this St. Michael's pendant, and if you look at the slow motion image of what happened to Charlie, the explosive force came from his pendant, and the explosion of the pendant broke his chain. His chain exploded out of his shirt. His chain split. It was a fat chain, a pretty heavy duty chain when it comes to like chains that people wear, not like a little dinky thing. Something that the average woman probably couldn't like break just by pulling it apart. And the average man would probably have to like really work at it to like break this chain. Um, so the amulet explodes, busts the chain, blows it out his shirt, and the chain whips around his neck. The amulet blows up through his shirt collar up into his neck. The end of the chain is whipping around his body, and they say, I mean, you can't really believe any of the things from his security guard or the doctor, because all of these people were bought and paid for already. But what you can see visually is this chain whips all the way around, and his shirt on his left side, it lifts up, coming directly from his amulet, and pierces the collar of his shirt and pierces his neck, goes up into his neck. When the chain whips around, it pulls it out of his neck, and then it's kind of hanging sort of from his shirt as the person next to him, part of the hit team, who has the meta glasses on, who had started recording prior to the shot, and then afterwards, after the when they're huddled over him, he's fucking with his meta glasses, um, and he's actually standing on a platform just like Charlie is, which makes no sense. He's giving off these like hand signals, and he's the guy like rubbing his arm and doing these weird things, just like a baseball person calling the shots, like in baseball. And then he tips Charlie over to the left, and then they all huddle around him. They hide all the evidence. They provide no first aid, and then they shuffle him out within a period of about 30 seconds, so that he can bleed out in the car. Or it almost seems like, I don't know. So the thing I'm not 100% on is the how. That's my best guess on the how, but all of it, everything else, all comes together in a cohesive, consistent narrative. The who, the why, the how, insofar as how the order is passed down uh, to finish the job in relation to Charlie. And given all of the evidence, it seems most likely that he did die, and that was how he died. And most likely he would have gotten shot once or twice as well, because that's what they do in a lot of these assassinations. They want to make extra sure. So it's possible that he was shot once or twice, maybe from the guy in the white shirt that was directly to his right, maybe from a person in a car directly behind him. Um, and then they assure that it's all like covered up because they control the FBI, they control the local police, whole situation via the Mormon mafia. And the Mormons would have gotten I said from the very beginning, what we witnessed was an 8-figure hit. So the 8 figures would have gone to the Mormons and the Mormon mafia. And then there was military sort of coordination as well, with like drones and the jet and like jamming signals. And the extent of the people that are in on it is somewhat astounding, and like on its face is what causes many people to be like, no, that couldn't be that many people that are in on it. But if you look at like a war that's waged, you have a lot of people involved in the war. And when people are employed in a war, there's no limit to the things that they'll do, because they're employed to do the worst things, to go and like kill or torture and steal, just like the worst satanic things that war is all about. Um, it's basically well, it's what that whole religion's all about. They're, after all, they've got an 8-front war going on, right? The more war, the better. The more divide and conquer and killing and attacks against life itself, against Christ, and then and people's positivity. And that's one of the biggest things, is to not get drawn into it, to see someone doing evil and to not be corrupted by it, to not be drawn into hatred for that person, but to just see them as they are, to see Hillary Clinton cackling over being responsible for the lethal murder, sodomization of Gaddafi, and just cackling like, we came, we saw, he died. We shoved a bayonet up his rectum until he died. And she's just so happy cackling about it. So I was all about being like anti-Hillary when Trump was elected the first time. I don't know if I was ever pro-Trump, but I was certainly anti-Hillary. And since then, I've renounced my U.S. citizenship, and I'm sovereign on the land here. And we won't get into that in this video, because I've got other videos to talk about here and what I'm doing here, and the essence of America, about revolution, of free markets, of freedom. Oh, last thing I want to say, Orange Man, what's his favorite word in the dictionary? Oh, the best word ever, tariffs. It's like saying, my favorite thing is taxing and strangulating you. That's my favorite thing ever. It's like, and who are his biggest enemies? Thomas Massey and Rand Paul. Like, the only two good people are his biggest enemies. He doesn't like free trade and free markets. He likes tariffs. He likes shutting down free trade, shutting down free markets. He likes taxing you. Every fucking thing that's coming out of his mouth is a lie, a self-egotistical aggrandizement. He's a fat sack of shit liar who's a little bitch slave to his Jew masters, and he's got no independence. And come at me, you fat fuck, dude. Look at me, you fucking coward. Look at me. I could save him. Actually, there was a short period of time where Trump was in alignment with Christ. And I can say that factually. And oh, how short that period of time was. But anyways, here I am, and I have no fear of anything, because life is eternal, and I've given everything that I have to the Most High, and therefore, what can I have any fear of? I have no surety of success. I have a guarantee of death. We all do. But if we believe in everlasting life, then all of our actions in this life which is temporary, will align with the eternal. The Jews and their slaves don't believe in eternal life. That's why they do all the evil that they do. They think this world is all there is. At least Trump has enough awareness to know, as he said the other day, he's not going to heaven. Yet he could. He wants to think about his legacy. How will people think of him? He wants his Nobel Peace Prize. He'll be thought of as a traitor. He'll be thought of as a traitor, and he'll be lucky to die before he is hung as a traitor that he is. A soulless, moralless, principleless, fucking liar, sellout traitor. And yet, I would happily save him. I would happily deliver him. I would happily guide him to heaven, which he can reach, which is the ultimate salvation, the ultimate legacy that's available to him. So, in truth, the way is available. And if he wants to turn away, just as everyone else who turns away from Christ, there is no remorse, there's no pity, there's no compassion, there's respect for their choice as they descend to hell, and we can impartially watch their torment increase exponentially as they're on their way. And we can say, are you sure you want to stay on that path you're on? Are you sure you don't want to repent and join us in eternal life and liberate yourself from that foul corruption which you call yourself? And if they say, nah, we're pretty sure we want to go to hell, then you can just say, okay, I'm not going to go with you. And I'm going to make sure everyone else around you has the same choice so they're not led blindly with you. Anyways, that's the end of this video. I love you, Candace. And I I have to say that in like the truest sense of just recognizing your spirit and your courage, and know that you're divinely protected, as are your children and your husband, so long as he stays loyal to you over the loyalties he had before being with you, will also be divinely protected. And the lies and illusions will have no power over those in truth, and those who are determined to go to hell will go to hell, and we'll watch them go to hell, and we will be unaffected by it, and it will just be the dead enemy flowing down the river as we sit in peace on the bank, at the bank, having all of the value, but knowing that the values that are all championed by the corrupt society are worthless. Your dollars are worthless. Your ego and fame is worthless. The only thing that is of import is the truth and your alignment with the Most High. And that is the last I'm ever going to speak about Charlie on a video. But I'm sure I'll talk about the other topics again. And we'll see if that holds true. But I don't think I'm ever going to talk about Charlie again. That's the final conclusion, and there's nothing left. Last time I talked about it, I thought there was some sort of certainty, but now I'm sure we have concluded. And this will reach who it's meant to reach. And that's that. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.